Hello and welcome to Peace Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Ronnie. I'm so glad that you could join us for this very special education event featuring the one and only Reverend David Maginley, and I'm certain that you will find your time nourishing and life-giving. David is, of course, an interfaith spiritual care provider at a major cancer treatment center in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Shout out to all the Nova Scotiaites. And author of Beyond Surviving Cancer and Your Spiritual Journey. He's also survived cancer 4 times, which led to a profound near-death experience and explorations in consciousness and the connection of body, mind, and spirit. With degrees in philosophy and as an ordained minister, David has a deep sense of purpose in supporting others in their spiritual journey. He knows cancer from both sides of the hospital bed and knows this life from both sides of the veil. Many of you were with us a year ago when David led us through our Lenten Wilderness Journey. Thank you so much again, David, the gift that keeps on giving. I know that, like me, you've really been looking forward to hearing from David again. I can't believe that it's already been a year since we did that. If you wish to revisit the series or catch it for the first time, you can find all 5 parts on the Peace Lutheran Church YouTube channel. Please like our videos and subscribe to our channel to get notifications about great content such as this session, which should be available in the next day or 2. Here at Peace, we believe that this event will help us to fulfill a vital ministry of providing spiritual education to our community. But even more importantly, it is a ministry of spiritual care for our neighbors, helping each of us grow into the love of God. Given the depth of wisdom and inspirational impact of David's presentation material, it seemed inappropriate to charge admission for this event. We wanted as many people to participate tonight as possible. But having said that, if you're in a position to help us cover the cost of this important event, a free will offering is greatly appreciated. And I'll post some info in the chat in a moment here. I also want to encourage you to visit David's website to learn more about his vital work in the realm of spiritual care. There you will find biographical info, educational resources, a blog, and more. You can also order David's book, Beyond Surviving Cancer and Your Spiritual Journey, winner of the 2016 Silver Nautilus Book Award. And now, enough of me, the moment you've all been waiting for. Your consciousness is the only real estate you share with God. Invest wisely. Join us as we explore the challenge and reality of the direct experience of God. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. What a beautiful thing to see so many smiling faces. We have over 40 people attending with this. I'm excited to explore this with you because it is our heart's desire. It is the central hope. And yet the direct experience of God is something I find many people don't have. Or if they do, it continues to be on one level of action and thoughts and sort of in the rational mind, when really the direct experience of God is so far beyond that. How do we open ourselves up to that living reality of and experience, even for a moment, what it is to be in Christ, to feel it to the bone and beyond? So I hope to explore that intelligently, wisely, and enthusiastically with you tonight. Before we do so, let's tune in this world which feels like it's falling apart. Our prayers, our consciousness, our intentions have great power, and I'll be showing you some information about that. But so it's all the more important for us to focus our hearts upon not only our hope for tonight, but the pain and the suffering of the world, especially for the people of Ukraine. The pandemic on top of that, and then for everyone who is struggling with anxiety, depression, hopelessness, and despair throughout our own lives. So let's have a moment of prayer and silence to center. I invite you to feel yourself supported by your seat, your chair, your sofa. Tune in to the sounds in your environment. Tune in to your body and your emotions. If you want to close your eyes, if that helps, please do so. And breathe. Be aware of your breath. I just invite you to visualize your heart opening to the world. To feel whatever you feel in this moment, to open to that. We're trying to be fully present. Gracious living God, loving Spirit, mystery of life. We open ourselves to you, for you inhabit this moment and no other. May we be so fully present that we are apprehended by your grace, infused with your love, and lifted from the stories of our lives, lifted to our role as the storytellers, the luminaries, the healing manifestations of love, as we emanate and flow from you, the master storyteller. Help us to be aware of this partnership. May you bless us tonight, inspire us, open us, help us be curious and entertain new notions, new concepts of what it is to be your children, expressions of your love. In the name of the Christ, who is everything. Amen. Are you here? I am not fully present. Part of me is wondering what I'm going to say. Although I have a very good idea, the next moment and the next sentence is always fresh and new. Am I fully present, though? No, I'm not. A part of me is thinking about how the day went. Part of me is thinking about what I just saw on the news. Very rarely are we fully present in this moment. And yet that really is all that is required to have the direct experience of God. For God is nowhere other than now and here. The problem is we are not. So the direct experience of God requires that we show up. I'm going to share my screen, share some slides. And let's explore the challenge of the direct experience. Now, if, like me, you've gone to church for decades, and for 10 years, I had a parish and presided at the services, and through the liturgy, through the rituals, I tried to facilitate a connection to the divine. And within the church, we usually experience that through those direct rituals, such as communion, the sacraments, rituals which are, by their definition, an action combined with an intention and an object in order to tune us, like a musical tuning fork, to tune us to love, right? For God is love. I have never thought of the sacraments that way or the rituals in worship that way until I wasn't in the parish, until I was in the hospital. And there I have for 20 years supported thousands of people on the edge of mortality. They have cancer, and I work in cancer care, palliative care, and intensive care. And I sit with people and we explore hope and suffering. We explore the journey that seems so brief in hindsight, how to work with the increasing limitations of the body, side effects of cancer therapy, and the unfinished love stories which lay before us. And the years are now compressed ahead of us into weeks and sometimes for some patients into days, and there isn't enough time. They want, above all, to love and be loved, to know that all is well, to feel safe in that love. And I'm always astonished by how so many patients are able to engage their suffering directly as long as they feel loved and are able to love well. Yet, most people, whether sitting in the church pew, comfortable and healthy, or sitting on the hospital bed, frail and near the end, most people, when they try to reach out to God, do so through a mode that just reinforces that the God is external, the God out there. We lift our petitions to the external God instead of tuning our consciousness to participate in God. There's a huge shift at play there, from petitioning to God to participating in the consciousness of God. This is our chapel at my hospital, and on that altar table is a prayer book where people write their prayers. And consistently, the prayers are asking God for help. That reinforces that God is to rescue us. But the direct experience of God reinforces that we are partners participating in the restoration, the healing, and the redemption of the world. How do we do that? Well, we do it by showing up. Here is a key phrase, and you know it well, but I hope I'm going to explore it with you in a way that you don't know. If you're going to show up, you must quiet the mind and be still. You have to get out of your own way. Now, that's going to be really difficult. In fact, I find it the greatest challenge that blocks me from directly experiencing God. I'm always interrupting myself. In my prayers, my meditations, my mind will not stop. We'll explore how to work with that and actually use the energy of the mind, all of the noise and mess within, to actually accelerate our connection to God. But for now, let's practice. I want to practice with you right off the bat and I'm going to guide you in this brief meditation, which is that sentence: be still and know that I'm God. As you're sitting, you don't need to close your eyes. You can look at the screen, but just say it over silently in your heart. Breathe, be still, and know that I am God. Let the noise of your mind continue while you say to yourself, be still, and know that I am God. And now we're going to descend. We're going to descend into our awareness. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Such a simple sentence. Such a profound exercise. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing in the way. There's nothing wrong. At the foundation, because we are already fully connected to God. How could it be otherwise? God, St. Paul says, is that through which we live and move and have our being, which means God is the foundational consciousness from which you emanate and by which you are sustained in every single moment. That doesn't mean you will be at peace. It means you will be. You will exist. And this is the perplexing part of it. It is important for our functioning on the human journey that we're not always aware of this. If we were, our ability to relate to the temporal, mortal struggle of the human journey would be compromised. This is the paradox of suffering. To have a direct experience of God is actually to enter into suffering, to allow yourself to be wounded, for that is the way of the Christ. That's the center of the crucifixion. Love turns into suffering and moves towards it, knowing that it is invincible. How can we do that, especially in the world as it is today? We begin and end by being still. When we do this, something amazing and miraculous happens, but we do not know what it is, and we are incapable of knowing what it is. This is critical for our partnership with God. We must not know what is going on, because if we did, our ego would jump in and we'd say, oh, I see it. I know what to do next. No, you don't. We just are not that wise, but they are very good at what they do. And to move into partnership with God then means being open to the ambiguity of how that's going to go, of how it's going to flow. It's important that you do not know what is happening. The only thing required is that we show up and are open, that we are available. I experience this every day in the hospital. I don't know what's going to happen when I stand outside a patient's room. Oh, I've prepared, right? I'm about to go and see someone I've never met before, and they're fighting for their life. So I check their chart. I talk with the nurse. I know their name. I may know a little tiny bit about emotionally how they're doing, but that's it. I walk in blind. And that's my biggest asset, because I walk in pausing, praying, and then proceeding. Pause, pray, proceed. And just by caring, just by opening to their suffering, beautiful conversations emerge. Wonderful ones that go far better than I ever could have planned if I had rehearsed that or had an idea. This is a difficult balance because we want to be in control. We want to know what's going on, and we have to be for the course of our own journey. But when it comes to the partnership, ambiguity is central to the practice. Now, as we look at the world, as we look at the suffering, we are asking and praying mostly for an intervention, but that intervention depends very much upon the cliche, be the change you want to see in the world. Action following intention is central to raise the energy, raise the impact of your prayer. So prayer I see as a form of spiritual psychotherapy, which aligns us to the divine consciousness. And then the inspiration comes, a whisper, right? An idea that just is fleeting, but it's intuitive, and you know how to follow through on the prayer. I was sitting in grief, watching the news about Ukraine, and I closed my eyes and I said a prayer. What can I do, Father? How can I help? I'm feeling powerless. Can we do something together? Then the doorbell rang. I opened it up. It was Doctors Without Borders. And I paused and I just went, that was good. That was really good. So we're supporting them. The direct experience of God is not a passive thing. If anything, it is a revolutionary act of bold intervention into suffering, in which you will incarnate the compassion that people so desperately need. And again, allowing yourself to be wounded by that is central to the practice. The scriptures say that every evening Jesus would go off on his own to pray, right? Restoring yourself by having time alone with God and with yourself to renew, to decompress, just to be still. The enterprise, the project of showing up and coming into partnership with God will create mystical experiences that will actually feel very ordinary. These are common. A feeling of peace, synchronicity, such as when our doorbell rang, sublime, eloquent, subtle, absolutely ingenious moments will transpire. It's exciting to have those happen because then you are living this faith. It's animated by action. It's not a Sunday morning ritual. It's not an abstract prayer or an ancient book, right? It's a living relationship. And again, just be open with curiosity, but try not to control it. And we'll see where it goes. I'm looking forward at the end of this presentation to hearing stories you may have of how that has manifested in your life. I'm going to go back to some of the slides. I love pulling from not so much scripture, but science when we're talking about the nature of God and our connection to God. Max Planck is one of the fathers of quantum physics, and he said this: all matter originates and exists by virtue of a force, right? And he sees this force as an intelligent mind. He could not help but look at the universe, the laws of physics, the way it all works, and he saw clearly there's a mind and intelligence behind all this. As you read this quote, it's important to remember there isn't matter and spirit. That's a dualistic view that will simply reinforce that God is out there instead of within here. I'd like you to reframe that model of reality to this one. Matter is the densest form of spirit. Again, that's why God is that through which we live and move and have our being. If matter is the densest form of spirit, then everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. But do I see with the eyes of love? Can I see the world and the universe as well as the individual who loves me and the one who offends me? Can I see it all as the densest form of spirit? What does that mean in our relationships then? Well, it means that those people who do not live lovingly, and I include myself in that because I'm so inconsistent in that enterprise, those who do not live lovingly have simply forgotten who they are. They're suffering from a temporary spiritual insanity of perceived separation from everyone else. And in that perceived separation, they think they need to have power and control. They need to exert their will or have their way, or things just don't seem right. We've all been there. But to see the world as sacred, as the densest form of spirit, is then to restore creation, right? The rocks, the trees, the creation groans for the restoration, the salvation, which salvation means wholeness, for everything to be whole. Now, this is what Jesus was praying for as he prayed for us in the Garden of Gethsemane. Let's have a look at that text. I read this with new eyes now. As you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us. You see that point? This is not anymore petitioning to an external God. This is participating in the consciousness of God. This is being part of the body of Christ, so that the world may believe that you have sent me, right? And that word believe, it's just not adequate. That the world may remember, that the world may wake up, that the world may come back to spiritual sanity, back to its senses and ours. The glory that you've given me, I've given them. Right? Given you. You shine and emanate with glory. You are already enlightened. You are already a full manifestation of God's love. You don't need to try and manufacture it. Just need to peel away. It's there. It's beautiful. The glory is within you. So that, why? So that they may be one as we are one. There it is again. I and them, you and me, that they may become completely one. There is no other. In fact, in the end, there is no me and there is no you. There's only us. There's only the one. This implies that we, along with the universe, we are the story or the experience of God. As God conceives, the Spirit creates, the Son experiences, or the universe experiences. Each of us are part of that experience. That we may be one in them and you and me, that they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me. And this is the key, and have loved them even as you have loved me. You may be thinking, how do I do this? Well, you already know. You do it by love, for God is love. Love is your spiritual practice. And as you love others and love yourself, you are having the direct experience of God. Father, he continues, I desire that those also whom you have given me, that would include you and me, may be with me where I am to see my glory. That is waiting within. That is shining and present within. The glory you've given me because, why? Again, because you loved me. As we love each other, we restore our identity as children of God, as sacred manifestations, direct experience. Righteous Father, the world does not know you. Well, there's an understatement. But I know you, and these that you sent me. I made your name known to them, right? The name represents all that the person is, right? The name of Christ, it's not his last name, right? It's a title, and it means the fullness, the full manifestation of love made human. And then I'll make it known so that the love with which you have loved me may be in them and I in them. So it's a rather convoluted prayer, isn't it? And yet the heart of it, as we explore it, is absolutely staggering. Let me show you some scientific examples of how this shows up. Here's a study in which cancer patients and their partners were involved in an experiment where the partners were trained in compassionate meditative prayer for their partners. And they hooked them up to these galvanic skin response monitors on their fingers. So that's measuring electrical conductivity. And so the receiving person was in a shielded room, a Faraday chamber, so no electromagnetic frequencies can get through that. There were 36 couples, 38 test sessions, 22 couples had, one pair was a cancer patient. So 12 of them trained for 3 months to direct the intention. And what did they find, right? 10 were trained in just presence, and then 14 couples, there was no training. So you got a control group, study group, and the wait group. What did they find? The receiver's skin conductance increased and it synchronized during the period of meditation and compassionate intention, despite the distance that separated them, despite the electromagnetic shielding in the room that they were in. So directing intention to a distant person synchronizes, activates, and aligns their metabolic patterns with yours and induces a relaxation response. Let's contemplate the implications of this. If I could go back, and I'm not going to because I love my job, but if I could go back to the parish and have a church, I would be curious to have sessions of education on your energetic anatomy and the power of prayer, because every Sunday we pray for people, but to have a focused, trained meditation and then to pray. And this may not show up in a church budget, but to have galvanic skin response or photo multipliers or really expensive devices called supercooled quantum interference magnetometers. These measure the biofield around a person, and it is found when you're in a centered prayer of loving intention, your biofield, or it's an electrical field around you, it leaps out from the heart. That's where it's strongest. It leaps out to about 12 feet. That's the distance that the magnetometers can measure it at. Just amazing, but its effects are non-local. Here, the people were separated by considerable distance. And indeed, that's been found to be the case even around the world. You can be praying, if enough people are praying with the centering meditation, intention is the key. It affects a change. There have been studies on crime and violence in cities and where meditation and centering prayer has been going on, and they see the crime rates go down. There are other experiments that measure the events globally in the world and how that causes a ripple effect that can be picked up by random number generators. What does this mean? It means there's no such thing as a private thought. Uh-oh. It means that intention is direction. It means that your heartfelt prayer is a direct partnership with the divine consciousness and with everybody else's. Wow. To show that research in Sunday morning, that's empowering. We are not powerless. And we're not cut off from God, though God often feels so far away. Well, who moved? We're not powerless in the face of suffering, and we're not powerless in the despair and the difficulty of the world. So I'm checking the time. We're on time. I would like to now invite you to another meditation. And this one is one of my favorite. It comes from a fantastic author named Rupert Spira. I want to read you just a short paragraph from one of his books called The Nature of Consciousness, Essays on the Unity of Mind and Matter. You can see I never did stop studying philosophy. Okay, here's his section. The character in a movie can never realize that she is the screen, because it is her identity as a limited character that is itself the veiling of the screen. In order to recognize her identity as the screen, the very mind which she is directing towards the empty space must dissolve. So imagine that you are writing a story. You're writing a story. It's important not to confuse the storyteller with the story, but we do that all the time. I confuse my thoughts with my identity. I confuse my feelings, right, with my reality. They're separate things. We don't need to believe everything we think. We don't need to be controlled by everything we feel. He says, in the same way, pure awareness never appears as an experience in or of the mind. Pure awareness never appears as an experience of the mind, although the feeling of being or the knowledge I am is a hint in the mind of its presence. As the mind gives its attention to the feeling of being or the knowledge of I am, as it gives its attention to that, its fixation on objective experience is relaxed and it begins to dissolve into its source and essence. You may be thinking, what is David talking about? Well, let's do it. We are going to do an exercise now that will demonstrate what I'm talking about. Again, I ask you, sit comfortably. For this one, I do encourage you to close your eyes because we want to block off sensory input. So sit comfortably. Your eyes are closed. Breathe. Listen. You can hear the sound of my voice. You can hear the sounds in your room. Open to all that is, all the sounds. There are no distractions. I can hear traffic and a very obnoxious vehicle outside. But it is simply part of what is here. So notice your breath. Notice the feeling of your body sitting in the chair, the weight of it, gravity pulling you, holding you. Move your awareness to any aches and pains you may have in your body and allow them to be there. Observe what it is to be embodied, how the floor feels under your feet, how your back feels in the chair. Observe what it is to be embodied. And now I invite you to observe your thoughts. Do not filter them or edit them. Just notice them, watch them. When you are observing your body was changing and growing. Every cell has eventually been replaced in your body. Every 10 years, every cell has been replaced, some faster than others. So the body's not essential. to who you are. In the same way, observe your thoughts, let them fly through your mind and rise and fall. They are not essential to who you are. You don't need to believe everything you think. You just let the mind think, have thoughts, because that's what it's designed to do. You can step back and watch those thoughts. Notice now your feelings. Your feelings are often held in your body, in a specific place, but notice whatever it is you feel. Notice how the feelings move. Breathe into them. You have your feelings and they flow. They are not essential to who you are. Just as you have been observing your body, your thoughts, your feelings, I'd like you to step back once more from even this experience. You've been able to step back and observe the body, the thoughts, the feelings. Now step back and observe the experience. I ask you, who or what is observing? Are you your experience? It is not essential. It keeps changing. What remains constant? Awareness remains constant. We are moving from be still and know that I am God to be still and know, to be still, to be. I invite you to listen to the room, listen to the sounds, and as you open your eyes, notice the shift in your awareness. Opening your eyes connects you once again to the external world. Just want to plant that seed. We are so caught up in the story, confusing it for the storyteller, confusing experience for identity. You can step back from it all. And this is not just an intellectual exercise, it's quite powerful. The essential nature of your mind, reading some notes here, the fact of being aware or awareness itself is always transparent and open and free and knowing. But then it gets clouded with thoughts and feelings. They obscure awareness. They add layers of experience. And that's the time when we often get caught up in the story. It becomes very strong when we are depressed or anxious or angry. What can we do? How can we work with those profoundly difficult states? The key is to stop, S-T-O-P, which means stop, take a breath, observe your experience. observe it. I have my thoughts, they don't have me. I have my feelings. Oh, they're so strong, but they don't have me. My foundation is peace. We lose ourselves in our own activity and thinking and perceiving all the time, like an actor who temporarily loses himself in the part that he's playing. What is to be done? Well, you trace back to the ground of being. Lutheran theologian Paul Tillich had that term for God. That's all we need to do, even when we're very anxious or depressed. Stop, observe, take a breath, observe, proceed. We don't do this because we so get involved in the context of our experience, right? We get caught up in the storm. And then we begin to say, I am sad, I am lonely, I am stressed, I am anxious. Yet even in that, there is behind it awareness, right? You can pause and you say, am I that? No, I'm having that. I'm having that experience. What am I? Become still. The answer is you don't know what you are. None of us can ever know. We say it in one way, I am a child of God. I am an expression of the divine consciousness, unique, one of a kind in this universe. But fundamentally, I cannot know my true nature. That is like trying to taste your own tongue. You can't do it because you're inside the experience, and we are incapable of accurately seeing ourselves from inside the experience. In fact, here's a radical thought. We are incapable of seeing reality as it is. It's impossible. I say that because we can only perceive a small part of the visible spectrum of light. All the electromagnetic frequencies of reality, most of them, we are blind to those. We cannot perceive reality as it is. It is filtered through the apparatus of our senses. And our brains, our consciousness functions as a reducing valve to filter through only the information that we need for this physical survival. That's the only information. If we could perceive all the spiritual entities and all the realms of consciousness, we'd be quite distracted millions of years ago and be eaten by a lion. We must only operate on the material plane while we're here. But then when we leave this world, the blinders come off and we see reality as it is. So we are the storyteller, not the story, but it's important to enjoy the ride and to write a beautiful story. I want to go back to the slides. We're almost at the end of this interesting exploration. I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on the direct experience of God, and I'll share my ultimate one at the end. So the story, what story are you writing? What is the book of your life? There's a great song by Sting called The Book of My Life. Please pull up a YouTube of it and have a look. And in it, he says, it's the book of my days, the book of my nights. There's a story of love that I can never, that always remains unfinished. And there's a chapter on God I don't understand. Right? My life is a mystery. As you write the story of life, your story, focusing on the love is the wisest way to put ink to paper. You can't go wrong when you focus on love. We are distracted by so many other things. But when you focus on love, you manifest the literal words of "you are the light of the world." And I again turn back to science. Albert Leninger, Principles of Biochemistry. This scientist found that we are pulsing with light in our DNA, right? Within the very code of life itself, there is infrared light pulsing out from us. And a single photon of light will initiate a cascade effect that regulates all metabolic processes in the cell. right? And then all metabolic processes in the body. Life starts at the energy of consciousness. Interestingly, as we shift that energy, it can shift biological patterns. This is a picture of a tadpole, and they simply changed the wattage upon the cell membrane, and it reprogrammed the cell. And so where the gill is, there you see an eye is growing. The electromagnetic frequencies lay the foundation for the biological structures and the manifestation of reality itself. Matter is the densest form of spirit. We participate in this. You ever wonder why people pray or that we're worshiping and why there's an instinctive thing to do with the hands? Turns out that there are photons, particles of light, that shine most strongly, right? The whole field shines most strongly from the heart, but directly you can get photons shining out of the hands, palm of the hands, and out of the forehead using a photomultiplier. Fascinating. Emotion is important with this. It's not just an intellectual exercise, it's an emotional, full experience of stillness and opening, right? And as we make ourselves available that way, God is already present, and something beautiful happens. Okay, I'm going to get really geeky on you before I end with a final story. This is total nerd stuff, I'm sorry. This is a model of consciousness. Now, consciousness is the biggest mystery to science, not what lives in the depths of the ocean or is there life in space, but what is life itself. Stuart Hameroff is an anesthetist at University of Arizona. Dr. Roger Penrose is an expert in quantum theory and black holes, worked with Stephen Hawking. And what they found is there is a phenomenon going on inside of us. And when we now have the technology to look at this, we see that in the neurons, right, throughout the entire body, but concentrated in the brain, they are sending electrical signals to each other. You know that through the dendrites and through the nerves. Within each neuron, it's themselves, there are these polymers called microtubules, and each of those are made of tubulins, which are protein subunits. These are in a lattice formation, and they're so small, they have they function as a computer gate, open, close, open, close. And that functions as a quantum computer within our cells and our DNA. And what happens is a particle of light pulses out of the neurons in the DNA in the infrared range, one pulse every 50 nanoseconds. Their hypothesis concludes that that is the interface between biology and biography, between matter and consciousness. This is how we flicker into this world. One every 50 nanoseconds, there's a now, and then a stream of them is a stream of consciousness. I will put some links up for you to explore that. Pretty cool. I explore all of that and more in my book. There's a little commercial. I am humbled. It won the Nautilus Book Award. That's quite prestigious. And I was always an abysmal, mediocre student, and I hated writing essays. So this book just flowed through me. So I really cannot take the credit for it. I give that to God, because they're so much better at what they do than I could ever be, but I just made myself available. So I want to come back to that direct experience. I had one in which my second round with cancer caused me to collapse, and I had a near-death experience. Now you can't have, that's a pretty intense direct experience of God. So I want to share what that felt like. I suddenly found myself, I was in a hospital chapel doing a church service, and the tumor blew. It makes this Molotov cocktail of chemicals and catecholamines, norepinephrine, dopamine. It blew. So my blood pressure just went crazy, and I basically just had a vasovagal reaction, then my heart stopped. I was gone. I was suddenly on a grassy hill, and there was a tree at the top of the hill, and I was suddenly complete and whole and more alive than I've ever been here. That state of consciousness was one with love itself, which means love, God is love. Love is not an emotion. Love is the highest state of consciousness. And I was one with that. I felt like a kid at Christmas. I was overjoyed, leaping and jumping. And I kept saying, I'm home, I'm home, I'm home. That's the word most commonly used by people who have a near-death experience. And the reason we say we're home is because we are now fully integrated, fully congruent with ourself, fully at peace and whole and connected to everything. We experience such a state of authenticity. There is no part of the self that is being suppressed or that you're blind to. All is restored, all is forgiven, all is love. I wanted to run to the top of the hill. I wanted to get to that tree. And there was somebody there, an angelic form, a humanoid form, and he basically told me, you can't go up there. We need to talk. It's great to see you. Things are going well, but you have to go back. Don't worry. We'll be with you. You have a lot more work to do. You're not ready to be here. We will be with you. That was the gist of the conversation. Consciousness to consciousness. And yet it felt like the most natural thing in the world. In fact, it felt like the only natural, normal thing I've ever experienced. This life feels like an aberration. It is so fractured. I am so fractured. This sense of separation from objects and other people, this requirement of my words to flow one after the other, and for me to have to think instead of just impart and communicate consciousness to you. This all takes so much time. It's very frustrating to be incarnated. But I was told clearly, you have a lot of work to do and you ain't ready to be here. That was 30 years ago. The experience lives in me. It hasn't faded. But I agree. Now, I had a lot of work to do, and I still have a lot of work to do. And that work is always about growing in love. And I am still sporadic with that. I still don't fully trust the journey. I often feel separate and distant from God. I am little more than a clever monkey in this world. But the love has me, and I know it will never let me go, and nor will it ever let you, for you emanate from it. I want to stop there. I want to thank you, and let's open up for conversations. We may as well stop the recording now before the conversation. And I want to hear your thoughts and reflections, and maybe some of your stories on your direct experience with God. For those who are watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning into this video, and I pray it's been helpful for you and animated curiosity and a new vocabulary for faith and your amazing journey. Keep shining, because the world needs your light. Okay, I'll stop recording.